Have you ever found yourself in a relationship where the more you give, the more distant they become? Where your desire for connection is met with withdrawal, silence, or confusion? 1 minute, things feel close, hopeful, even intimate, and the next they're pulling away, shutting down or creating space so fast it leaves your nervous system spinning. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. And you're not asking for too much. I'm Jim Rohn, and in today's video we're exploring a powerful and often misunderstood truth: how secure people can actually trigger oxytocin, the bonding hormone, even in avoidant partners. Yes, even the ones who claim they don't do emotions or seem allergic to intimacy. The key: not pressure, not pursuit, but presence. The kind that secure individuals embody without trying to earn love, prove their worth, or bend themselves out of shape. Here's the psychological trap many anxious or emotionally attuned people fall into. We believe that if we're just more patient, more understanding, or more available, we can fix the emotional gap. But that overfunctioning only confirms the avoidant's worst fear, that closeness will cost them their autonomy. What actually builds trust and triggers connection in the avoidant brain isn't neediness or performance, it's emotional steadiness, boundaries, self-respect. Secure people don't beg to be loved, they invite love through their calm clarity and grounded presence. In this video, I'm going to break down what avoidant attachment really is, how oxytocin and bonding hormones function differently in those with avoidant wiring, and how people with secure energy naturally trigger connection without chasing it. You'll learn exactly how to stop spiraling into self-doubt, how to communicate your needs with calm authority, and most importantly, how to hold your ground with someone who keeps pulling away. If you're tired of emotional whiplash, of walking on eggshells, or feeling punished for simply wanting closeness, this video will change how you see yourself and how you show up. So if that resonates, hit subscribe. You deserve connection that doesn't make you shrink, and this is your space to reclaim it. Let's begin. So, let's talk about oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone. Most people associate it with cuddles, affection, or even intimacy after sex. But there's something deeper going on, especially when it comes to how avoidantly attached individuals experience connection. It's not just physical closeness that triggers oxytocin. It's emotional significance and investment. And that's where things get really interesting. A group of researchers came up with something called the identify and invest hypothesis. It explains that for oxytocin to be released, a person has to first identify the relationship as meaningful and then choose to invest something valuable: time, energy, emotional availability into that bond. In other words, bonding doesn't just happen because someone's around. It happens when they decide, this matters to me and I'm showing up for it. Now here's the twist: avoidant partners often don't feel safe enough to make that kind of investment unless the relationship feels like it honors their autonomy and doesn't demand emotional labor before they're ready. If they sense pressure or urgency, their default is to retreat. So even if you're doing everything with love texting, often offering support, asking for closeness, it might be interpreted as a demand, not a gift. Let's take an example. Imagine a woman named Lily dating someone avoidant named Mark. She's emotionally available, consistent, and communicative. But every time she brings up wanting more quality time or deeper conversations, Mark seems to shut down. He might say things like, "You're asking for too much," or "I just need space." Meanwhile, Lily feels like she has to dim her needs to avoid triggering his distancing. What's really happening here? Lily is trying to create connection through pursuit, but Mark doesn't perceive the relationship as something he's choosing to invest in. It feels like something he's being pulled into. And if he hasn't identified it as a relationship he values enough to invest in emotionally, no oxytocin spike occurs. In fact, the more Lily chases, the more Mark feels cornered, and the cycle continues. This is where secure energy becomes powerful. A securely attached person doesn't panic when someone pulls away. They recognize that closeness must be mutual. They don't try to control or prove their worth. Instead, they show up with presence, they express their needs clearly, and if the other person can't meet them halfway, they're willing to walk away with self-respect intact. And here's the magic of that. When an avoidant partner sees that you are identifying yourself as valuable, that you're invested in your own emotional well-being, they often begin to do the same. The relationship becomes something they might be curious to invest in, not something they need to escape. Why? Because it now fits the Oxytocin model: perceived value plus chosen investment. Not pressure, not panic, just presence. Let's go back to Lily. What would secure energy look like for her? Instead of over-explaining her needs or trying to soothe Mark's every hesitation, she might say, "I care about you and I enjoy spending time with you. But I'm someone who values emotional closeness and consistency. If that's something you're open to exploring, I'd love to keep getting to know you. If not, I respect that, but I also need to honor where I am." That one calm, clear statement shifts the energy completely. It communicates value, it gives space, and it invites Mark to make a choice. Identify and invest or don't, but the door doesn't stay open forever. And here's why that works psychologically. Avoidant individuals often form attachments more slowly. They're scanning for risk. But once they begin to perceive the relationship as stable, not needy, and offered, not demanded, they're more likely to decide to engage. And when they do, that decision to invest is what activates bonding hormones like oxytocin. It becomes their choice. That's what triggers connection. So if you're someone who has felt like you have to do all the emotional work, if you felt like you need to perform worthiness or wait around hoping they finally see your value, pause. You don't have to convince someone to love you. You have to be willing to be seen as you are and let them decide. Because the truth is, oxytocin doesn't flood in from proximity alone. It comes from investment, mutual, chosen, and secure. And when someone isn't investing, your secure response isn't to chase harder. It's to step back and let their absence tell you the truth. We're going to dive even deeper into how secure people navigate those crossroads and how you can show up with that same grounded clarity, so don't forget to subscribe and stick around. Let's now talk about something that feels frustrating, but also makes a lot of sense once you understand the avoidant wiring: how avoidant people often react differently to emotional connection. This is one of the biggest reasons anxious-leaning partners feel stuck. You give more, you're consistent, you're open about your feelings, and instead of drawing them closer, it seems to push them further away. It's confusing, even painful. But there's a deeper psychology behind it. What we're learning from attachment research is that avoidants often experience a surge of oxytocin, not when they feel safe and emotionally held, but when there's an imbalance. Specifically, when they feel more invested than their partner, when they're unsure of how the other person feels, or when they perceive emotional distance. That's when bonding chemicals spike for them. It's ironic, isn't it? The very thing that makes anxious people panic. Emotional uncertainty is sometimes what avoidant people unconsciously associate with desire and connection. Let's break that down in real life. Say someone like Daniel, who has an avoidant attachment style, starts dating someone warm and secure. Let's call her Rachel. Rachel expresses interest in clear ways. She texts back. She asks thoughtful questions. She brings emotional safety to the table. But over time, Daniel starts to feel less drawn in. Not because Rachel is doing anything wrong, in fact she's doing what a secure person should do, but because Daniel's nervous system is wired to associate closeness with loss of control. Rachel's consistency removes the tension. The unpredictability is gone, and with it the sense of emotional pull that he's used to. Now, flip the scenario. Let's say Daniel starts seeing someone who's less available, maybe even a little distant or hot and cold. Suddenly he's texting more, thinking about them, constantly wondering where he stands. And that imbalance where he is unsure and investing more actually triggers a surge of oxytocin for him. This isn't love in a secure sense. It's a kind of chemical drama that mimics connection because it's what feels familiar and emotionally stimulating to someone with an avoidant history. That's why anxious people often feel like they're being punished for being emotionally clear. You might think I'm showing up. I'm being honest. I'm offering love. Why is this pushing them away? The answer is, emotional transparency removes the emotional tension avoidants are unconsciously addicted to. It leaves no gap to close, and because they haven't learned to feel safe in steady closeness, they associate calm with boredom or threat. But here's the key takeaway. This has nothing to do with your worth. This is a nervous system pattern they've carried for years. The mistake anxious or secure-leaning people often make is they try to create that tension again to pull back, become less available, or play games to get the avoidant to re-engage. And yes, sometimes it works short-term, but it comes at a high cost: your authenticity, your peace, and your emotional safety. Instead, the secure path looks like this. You keep showing up in your truth, and you stop trying to earn connection through imbalance. You say, here's who I am, here's what I need. If you're not in a place to meet that, I won't twist myself into someone else. I'll step back. Because your peace doesn't require anyone to chase you. It requires you to choose you and let people rise to meet you or fall away. We'll talk more soon about how to regulate your own nervous system during these disconnects, but for now, just know this. You're not too much. You're just offering real connection to someone who's still scared of it. And that clarity, that's your power. Let's go a little deeper into why uncertainty often triggers more emotional engagement in avoidant partners, and why that can feel so frustrating if you're someone who leads with emotional clarity. One of the most helpful metaphors researchers and therapists use to explain this is the image of two glasses of water. Imagine one glass is crystal clear, clean, see-through, nothing hidden. That glass represents emotional certainty. You know where you stand. You know how the other person feels. There's no guessing, no mixed signals. Then imagine another glass filled with murky, unclear water. It's cloudy. You can't quite see what's in it. That glass represents emotional unpredictability, the kind that comes with hot and cold behavior, inconsistent affection, or vague communication. Now here's the twist. Avoidant individuals are often more drawn to the murky glass, not because they enjoy drama or chaos, but because it feels familiar. For many avoidant people, their early relationships, especially with caregivers, were marked by inconsistency. Maybe love was offered one day, withheld the next. Maybe closeness came with conditions. As a result, their nervous systems became wired to associate unpredictability with attachment. So, when they encounter emotional murkiness later in life, their system lights up. Not because it's healthy, but because it feels like home. Let's take a real-life example. Picture Alex, an avoidant-leaning guy who grew up in a home where emotions were unpredictable. Maybe one parent was critical, the other emotionally distant. As an adult, Alex dates two people back to back. First, he meets Jenna, who is emotionally available, kind, and clear about her feelings. She tells him early on that she likes him and wants to build something real. He enjoys her company, but soon feels restless, bored even. He tells himself, maybe we don't have chemistry. Then he meets Zoe. Zoe is inconsistent. She's affectionate one day, distant the next. She takes hours or days to respond to texts. She gives just enough attention to keep Alex guessing. Suddenly, Alex can't stop thinking about her. He starts checking his phone more. He feels a pull. But it's not because Zoe is a better fit. It's because Zoe reminds him on a subconscious level of those early emotional imprints where connection was something to earn, not something freely given. This is why if you're anxious-leaning or secure, you might feel baffled when your consistency seems to do the opposite of what you expected. You think I'm showing love. Clearly, shouldn't that feel safe and attractive? And yes, for a secure person it would. But for someone with avoidant tendencies, that emotional transparency removes the tension their brain is used to craving. That murky glass, the confusion, the emotional distance, the guessing creates a kind of emotional high because it's triggering those old unresolved patterns. But here's where your power comes in. Once you understand this, you don't take it personally anymore. You stop thinking, I need to be less available to be wanted. Instead, you realize I can be fully myself. I just won't keep pouring into someone who only drinks from the murky glass. You are the clear glass, and the right person, someone ready for real connection, will crave that clarity, not run from it. Keep being clear, consistent, and emotionally honest. That's not weakness, that's security, and that's where real love begins. Now let's talk about something that trips up a lot of people in these dynamics, the tragic delay in avoidant emotional processing. This is one of the most heartbreaking patterns I see, because it causes a lot of unnecessary pain on both sides. And understanding it can help you stop blaming yourself and start responding with more clarity and peace. Here's what the research tells us. Even when an avoidant person feels bonded, even when oxytocin is quietly building in the background, they often don't consciously feel it in real time. Their system is so used to suppressing emotional responses that they experience feelings on a delay, kind of like watching a movie where the subtitles are out of sync. You're watching a dramatic scene unfold, but the captions telling you what's happening come several moments too late. By the time they fully register the emotional importance of a moment like your presence, your absence, or your emotional pullback, it's often after you've already stepped away. Take, for example, someone like Taylor. She dates an avoidant man named Chris. Taylor communicates her needs kindly, gives him space when he asks for it, and eventually tells him, I care about you, but I need more consistency. I don't want to force this, so I'm going to step back. Chris seems unbothered. He might even say something cold like, yeah, I think that's best. Taylor walks away, feeling like her connection didn't matter. But here's what often happens behind the scenes. Weeks later, Chris starts feeling a sense of emptiness. He starts thinking about her, maybe even missing her. He might not even understand why. That's the oxytocin effect kicking in, but late after the emotional moment has already passed. This delay is why many avoidant partners reach out after the breakup, sometimes months later, when the other person has already healed or moved on. It's not always manipulation. It's often a genuine delayed realization of what the relationship meant. But that delay can cost the relationship entirely because people like Taylor don't wait forever. Nor should they. And this is why your secure response matters so much. When you set a boundary and step away not in anger, but with self-respect, you give their system the space to process. Whether or not they circle back, you've already chosen clarity over confusion. And that's a decision a secure person makes every time. Here's the most important takeaway I want you to walk away with. Avoidants are not incapable of love or bonding. They can attach. They do feel. The problem is their emotional processing is often slow, confusing, and tangled up in layers of unprocessed childhood experiences. What looks like coldness or indifference from the outside is often just emotional overwhelm they don't yet know how to manage. So, while they can bond, it takes longer, it's less direct. And for many of them, it feels more like danger than comfort at first. That's why so many avoidant individuals seem emotionally detached in the moment, only to reach out weeks or months later with some version of, "I've been thinking about you," or "I didn't realize what I had." The emotions were there, the oxytocin was there, but they didn't know how to feel it fully until the emotional stakes changed. And by that time, the relationship might already be out of reach. Let's revisit our example of Taylor and Chris. Taylor showed up with warmth, openness, and healthy communication. Chris, in his avoidant style, stayed distant and non-committal. When Taylor finally walked away, he didn't stop her. He didn't fight for the relationship. But later, once the silence set in, once her presence was gone, that's when the feelings caught up to him. Maybe he reached out again. Maybe he didn't. But what matters most here is Taylor didn't wait to be chosen. She didn't try to manipulate emotional tension to get his oxytocin flowing. She stayed grounded in her worth, and that gave her peace, even if Chris came back late. Here's where things get really important for you. Uncertainty might trigger attraction in avoidant partners, but it will never sustain a healthy relationship. You cannot build love on a foundation of mixed signals, emotional withdrawal, or delayed connection. It might keep someone's attention for a while, but it won't build trust. What sustains commitment, real lasting intimacy, is emotional safety. And emotional safety comes from consistency, mutual investment, and vulnerability. The very things that secure people naturally bring to the table. So the real challenge for someone like you, if you're secure or healing from anxious patterns, is this. Can you offer emotional warmth without abandoning yourself? Can you bring safety without over-functioning? Can you love someone from a distance? If they're not ready to meet you halfway without shrinking to be chosen, that's where your growth lies. That's where your power lives. You don't need to chase or become unpredictable to be desired. You don't need to create tension to hold someone's attention. You need to embody the kind of clarity that feels like peace. And yes, some people will walk away from that because they're still attached to emotional chaos. But the ones who are ready, they'll rise to meet you there. So take heart. You're not too much. You're not asking for too much. You're simply not willing to settle for too little. And that's the kind of boundary that transforms everything. Let's bring this all together with a clear and meaningful close. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you not just for watching, but for doing the emotional work it takes to understand these complex dynamics. What we've talked about today isn't just theory. It's the real lived experience of countless people who are trying to love and be loved in the face of attachment wounding. And chances are, if you're watching this, you're one of them. To quickly summarize what we've covered, avoidant partners can bond, but their emotional wiring often causes them to process feelings slowly and under the radar. We looked at how oxytocin, the bonding hormone, spikes, not always in moments of closeness, but in situations that involve emotional uncertainty, especially for avoidants who grew up around inconsistent caregiving. This explains why emotional tension feels more stimulating for them than stability. But while uncertainty might trigger desire, it's emotional safety that sustains real commitment. We also talked about the identify and invest hypothesis. that for oxytocin to activate deeply, a person has to recognize the relationship as meaningful and choose to invest in it. And we explored how secure people can influence this process, not by chasing or performing, but by showing up with grounded clarity and letting the avoidant choose whether or not they're ready to meet you there. Your role is not to force that investment. Your role is to stand in your self-worth, communicate clearly, and make peace with their choice, whatever it is. That's what secure love looks like. It doesn't beg, it doesn't bend to be chosen, and it doesn't stay small to make someone else feel comfortable. It stays open and boundaried. It says, here I am, and I'm not here to prove I'm worthy, I'm here to connect. And if you're not ready, that's okay. I choose me anyway. So if this video helped you make sense of your relationship dynamic or gave you a new lens to see your own attachment style more clearly, I'd love for you to hit subscribe. This channel is all about helping you navigate relationships from a place of self-respect, emotional clarity, and secure energy, whether you're working through heartbreak, dating again, or just learning how to relate more authentically. And I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share your experience. Have you seen these avoidant patterns in someone you've dated, or maybe even in yourself? What helped you hold your ground or walk away with dignity? Thanks again for being here. Remember, your needs are valid, your clarity is powerful, and your peace is worth protecting. See you in the next one.